All right, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Star Wars Mark of Balance podcast. My name is Mark, and today we will be getting into The Clone Wars, originally released on Cartoon Network. Not that Clone Wars, the other Clone Wars, the first original Clone Wars, which is weird to say like original Clone Wars, but it is. And with its re-release on Disney Plus, I thought it would be cool to go back and see how it holds up after all these years. I mean, it came out in 2003 between episodes 2 and 3. I was like 5 or 6 at the time when it came out, and I used to watch it religiously. Like, I would pop in the CD on a random afternoon, make a bowl of popcorn, and just watch it because I adored these movies so much. And I would even say it's more nostalgic than Dave Filoni's Clone Wars because I was even younger, and I remember it so vividly. So I was excited to hear that it was going to be brought to Disney Plus, and I wanted to take the chance to rewatch it as a 22-year-old and see how it holds up, really. And so I'm basically just going to structure this episode. I'm going to talk about Volume 1. And when I say talk about Volume 1, I mean I'm literally going to go through my notes as I watched it. They're all in chronological order, so it'll basically just be along with the storyline and whatever my overall thoughts were, and sometimes I'll mention like a specific scene if I'm watching that, and we'll just go through it. And what an interesting rewatch, let me tell you. I remember every single plot point. I almost remember every single like frame from the show. But rewatching it, this show, or these movies, are absurd. Like, next level absurd, over the top, Coke-induced Star Wars power fantasy. Right from the start, it is just balls to the walls action. Clones everywhere, droids everywhere, ships blowing up, huge fleet battles. It really just felt like someone wanted to make the most over-the-top Star Wars. And as a kid, I absolutely loved it. And then as an adult, I can appreciate it. It was fun to rewatch. Can I say that there was a lot of substance in it? At some points. But that was literally the first note I wrote rewatching just the first volume. Just the first volume in the first 5 to 10 minutes. I was like, this is insane how over-the-top this is. And it was just weird because I knew it was over the top as a kid, but then seeing it as an adult, I just looked at it through a new lens. I guess I'll just go into it before I forget. But there was just some scenes, like, for example, the Mace Windu scene where he takes on just an entire droid army with his hands and uses, like, force punches. And the entire premise of the battle is this droid ship has a huge hammer on the bottom of it. And I guess the purpose of this ship is to just go into battles and just smack the ground and create a wave and an earthquake. And I was just sitting there watching it. I was like, what? I remember that this happened, but I can't believe this actually happened. Such a weird weapon. And it happens so much throughout the show. I mean, Kit Fisto, he does this thing where he makes a force bubble and it just penetrates like straight metal. He takes out this big, like, crustacean ship with just a force bubble. And as a kid, I just accepted it. And as an adult, I'm like, what? But it was cool. That's the thing. It was all cool. So, with that premise, I'm not going to try and take this series too seriously. I'm going to analyze it because I like to. And I think you guys also enjoy my analysis because I think it's usually pretty good and pretty well thought out. But at the back of my mind, I know that the series was not aiming to be this super deep Star Wars experience. Even though it has moments where I think it does it really well, I really think what it was trying to do is entertain kids and fill that gap between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. And what I think is really cool about it is that it is between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, and it was the 6th piece of Star Wars media to come out that was like officially licensed, that wasn't a book. And I think it's really cool because it's almost like a snapshot of what Star Wars was like at the time. There wasn't this huge expanded universe. I think people forget or they don't realize that how much Clone Wars expanded the Star Wars galaxy. And before the Clone Wars TV show, how much it expanded the Star Wars galaxy. And going back to before the Clone Wars came out is so weird because you're just seeing how, I don't want to say simple Star Wars was. Like, for example, the clones have this whole different persona. They're the clones from, Attack of the Clones or Revenge of the Sith. They're like faceless soldiers. They don't have personalities or anything. They're just soldiers. And that's what it was at the time. So you can't fault the movie for it. So I can appreciate it. It's a little snapshot, and it also introduced a bunch of stuff. So I'll get right into it. So the first thing that sticks out to me when I watched it was, other than the power trip, was the clones and the planet's design. The clones were a super simple but sleek design. They introduced a lot of cool ideas, like the scuba clone with Kit Fisto, the clones that wore shawls, and this really wet and drenched planet, and of course the ARC troopers, which I'll get into. But overall, I appreciated the clone design here. And the planet design as well was super creative. They had all these different biomes, different locations. I mean, even some iconic planets they introduced here. I believe Ilum wasn't introduced. The planet where the Kyber crystals are harvested to make the Jedi lightsabers. Obviously, the younglings go in and they can get their Kyber crystal when it calls to them. Something that's shown in the Clone Wars TV series, but I think before here, we didn't know about Ilum, which was really cool that this introduced that. I feel like the prequels, that was one of their biggest strong points, was there were so many different planets and so many cool designs, and I think the Clone Wars movies here did a good job of continuing that legacy of bringing in these new, interesting-looking planets. And to jump back to the clones, I want to talk about the introduction of the ARC troopers in the beginning of this first volume. They're super militaristic, obviously, in this rendition of clones. The whole time they do this whole op, they don't use any words. It's all hand signals, which was so cool as a kid to see them use all the hand signals and everything. And they do that all the way up to where they take out the cannon without a word said, and it's very Navy SEAL-like, which I can appreciate a lot. As a kid, it really got me obsessed with the clones because I love their designs and I love how they operated. I just think it's really cool we have these two different ways of portraying the clones. You can have these super highly efficient clones that are less human and they don't really have any backstory or depth to them. Or you have these clones in the Clone Wars TV series that have these wants and desires and aspirations, but you lose a little bit of that efficiency. So I think it's cool. You could take your pick, really. I happen to love both in their own ways. And since I'm talking about this ARC Trooper storyline, plotline, kind of in the beginning of this movie, I just have to mention that this movie was Man of Steel before Man of Steel happened. The amount of city destruction with no regard for any human life in this battle is hilarious. I mean, the Jedi cannons are aiming directly into the city, firing away, leveling buildings. Anakin's chasing this ship through the streets, literally just shooting, no problem, just hitting the sides, hitting walls, blowing up towers. The clones are shooting rockets into windows. I mean, absolutely no regard for anything. Caution to the wind. No backstory on why they're there, why they're doing this. The banking clan's there, obviously some separatist activity, but it's just funny to rewatch and see it. Just why did I never question this? Maybe it's a deep war undertone of, see, the Clone Wars were unnecessary. Look at all this useless destruction. I don't think that's it. But I thought it was funny. And since I'm talking about the city, I'll just jump right into the Dirge. I think it is the Dirge arc, where there's all these cannons, and the droids, they're losing bad. And the banking clan is like, oh, what are we going to do? And you know what they come up with? Speeder bike jousting. That's how we're going to take out these cannons. We're going to get this guy that's going to stand in a speeder bike with all these assassin droids, and they're going to go joust these futuristic weapons. That's what we're going to do. I mean, there is no way someone was completely sober writing this. Jousting, and the joust didn't even do anything cool, like the poles. They were just straight up jousting poles. They didn't shoot anything. They didn't do anything futuristic. They were just poles. And I just loved it. It was stupid fun. And they destroy all these cannons, and Obi-Wan and his clones, they just come out of the clouds, and they were ready for a joust battle. They brought these speeders and their own jousting poles, and they said, sir, what are we doing with all these jousting poles and speeders? And Obi-Wan said, you never know when someone's going to challenge you to a joust-off in this Star Wars galaxy. And the clone said, all right, sir, we'll pack it. And then these droids come through, they take out all the cannons, and Obi-Wan just looks at that clone and just smirks at him. He's like, see, I told you we'd need these jousting poles. And then they just have this joust-off. And it's one of the most absurd things I've ever seen in Star Wars, but it is absolutely hilarious, and it's just a power fantasy, and Obi-Wan takes on Dirge, I forget his name, and he takes him out really easily because he just uses all these gadgets and stuff, and Obi-Wan just destroys all of them, and that's really it. And then they blow up the cannon, and Obi-Wan destroys him from the inside. I mean, that's really it, but gosh, that jousting was so funny on the speeder bikes. Next thing that comes up is Asajj Ventress's intro, which is, I appreciate this for creating the character of Asajj Ventress. I mean, without that, the Clone Wars couldn't have made her such an amazing character and, one of the best, I think. In this one, she is just completely a device for Anakin and his character arc, because her lines make next to no sense. I mean, she comes on the scene, she's got the blue and green lightsabers, she takes out all, the bounty hunter things in the arena, super cool, and then right to Count Dooku's face, this insanely powerful Sith Lord that obviously she knows he is. She's like, you know nothing of the dark side or being a Sith. And it's like, who are you talking to? Like, what? And then Count Dooku says something like, oh, you look like Sith, you fight like Sith, but you have fear, and Sith don't have fear. And I was like, I mean, they probably have the most fear. That's, the whole point of them. I mean, I'm sure it's from a place of arrogance, but, yeah, the Sith have a lot of fear. They want to keep their power. That's their fear, losing the power. And that was kind of the introduction to something that I noticed, was that a lot of the lines of dialogue in this movie series sounds really cool, but makes no sense. You'll hear the line, you're like, ooh, that's mysterious, that's dark. But then you think about the line, you're like, I don't think that makes any sense. Well, I'll talk about the Asajj Ventress in the Clone Wars movie. We're going to talk about how Anakin should be canceled by now because he said some very sexist things in this movie. When Asajj Ventress shows up as an unnamed assassin in her ship, she is destroying a lot of Anakin's fighters, and he says, this is no droid pilot. I'm going to follow him. Really, Anakin? Really? You're going to follow him? You don't even know who it is yet. And you're assuming that it's a man that is only capable of doing this? After seeing that, I don't know how Anakin is still beloved. I don't know how he's still in the movies. I don't know how they haven't retconned and edited him out of all the movies and shows. But I couldn't take it when I watched it. I almost turned it off, but I knew I had to do this review for you guys, so I stuck it out. But I wanted to let you guys know I was also very disappointed in Anakin. I thought the Ilum arc was very cool. That was probably the first time, or definitely was the first time we saw Ilum and the Kyber crystals and how Jedi construct their lightsabers. So that was super cool. I like that. And shout out Ayla Secura and Luminar Unduli for being there. That was fun. I also very much appreciate the enemy variety throughout the entire series. Clone Wars, they stuck with a lot of base droids and, the usual run-of-the-mill droids. But in this one, they really got creative. I mean, they had these cloaked droids on Ilum were assassin droids. They had the droids that shot bubbles, and they had those stick-looking droids, but they were kind of different than the ones from the Clone Wars. The enemy variety was very good in this show with all the different droids, and I think it was super creative, and I wish Clone Wars, the show, maybe expanded its horizons a little more. The battle between Anakin and Asajj on, I believe it was one of the moons of Yavin 4, which was really cool, tie back to the originals. But I thought this battle was really cool. Something that always stuck out to me was when it started to rain, and they had their lightsabers, and every raindrop, when it touched the lightsaber, it would go like, tss, and all this smoke was coming off him. I thought that was such a cool visual, and I always remember just being obsessed with that as a kid. I was like, wow, that's awesome. I want to have a lightsaber out in the rain. I liked how it started and Anakin was covered in blue light and Asajj was covered in red light. and then they fight through, and Anakin's getting madder and madder. And then when they get outside, Anakin is then covered in red light fighting her. And it's just a really cool transition to show, his turn and his evil, dark ways that he can be capable of. I just kind of appreciated the almost animosity of the fight. Like seeing a Jedi fight like that. I know it's not the Jedi way, but seeing a Jedi fight like that, very, I don't know how to put it, but very gritty. I thought it was really cool. And then obviously he wins by just smashing her lightsaber until the literal ground breaks below her, and then she falls to her death. And then he lets out a manly scream. It was pretty cool. And the last thing I'll talk about from Volume 1 was the Grievous horror show. Man, Grievous in this series was so good. I almost wish Clone Wars didn't even put the Grievous they put onto the screen, because this Grievous is so good. He is scary. He's menacing. Everything he says is sick. One of my favorite things he says from the first one is, "Make peace with the Force now, for it is your final hour." Damn. I mean, the only person that said meaner things or more intense things than that was Sidious himself. That was a cold bar. And just his whole demeanor in the series was so much better than the Clone Wars TV series. And I just wish the Clone Wars TV series drew from this more, because this Grievous was really special and super scary, super intimidating. I mean, he took on like 6 Jedi in this one, and I can kind of understand how that's a little over the top if it was to be shown in the TV series, but I really think Grievous should have been more of a threat like this to actually take out a bunch of Jedi, because I don't even think he does it. I think when they show it in the Clone Wars TV series, he usually has a bunch of Magna Guards with him, and they just take out Jedi together, and it's usually taking on one Jedi. He's obviously a really good battle tactician in the Clone Wars series, but I just wish his hand-to-hand combat was a lot better, and I wish he was portrayed a lot scarier. And yeah, it basically ends with Grievous literally taking out 2 Jedi Masters in Aayla Secura and Shaak Ti, and he kills 2, I think, like Padawan-ish people. The one guy looks like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. And he was about to take out Mundi, but the clones, obviously, the ARC troopers, show up in the next volume. And I like how it finished. It was like a cliffhanger, and it was cool. I liked it. And I appreciated how Grievous collects these lightsabers. It's a cool thing to see him actually, pick them up and collect them and like look forward to it. He also used his feet a lot. Like he used his feet while holding a lightsaber with his foot, which was interesting, but it was unorthodox, as Count Dooku says. But yeah, it pretty much ends there, and I'll talk about Volume 2 now. So Volume 2 obviously has the ARC troopers come and rescue the Jedi against Grievous. Once again, really cool clone designs. They had new ones. They had this clone that had a turret that he pulls over the top of himself, and then the one clone with like a minigun. That was super cool. And they escape with the Jedi, and Grievous lays another sick bar down. He says, run all you want, Jedi. You're only prolonging the inevitable. And I was like, yes, go Grievous. Go Grievous. But really, the beginning of this starts with Anakin being promoted to a Jedi Knight. I thought it was really awesome to see the explanation of the trials, and I think really this is the only thing on screen where they actually explain the trials. Specifically, they say the trial of the flesh. Obviously, he's got his arm cut off, or his hand cut off. And then the trial of the spirit, which he still has to overcome, which is, facing yourself. And that's basically his whole journey. And this one is, facing yourself and coming to terms with yourself moving forward so that you don't fall victim to it. And that was kind of the theme of this for him. The knighting ceremony was super unique, something we hadn't seen before. All the Jedi lightsabers lit up in blue and green, the whole room, and then Yoda cuts his Padawan little hair thing off, which was really, we'd never seen it before, and we still haven't technically in anything visual that's technically canon. And so that was really cool. And then that transitions really well into him leaving as this, brand new Jedi Knight, short hair, no scars, he looks fine, and he leaves and he, takes command, and you see this like full transition for him, which was really cool. And he comes back to Padme and he looks completely different. He has a scar on his eye. He has this long hair. He looks rugged. I mean, you really see that transition, which I think was unique to Clone Wars, seeing him go from this Padawan to this super confident Jedi Knight, and the toll it took on him. His eyes are much less bright, kind of. And what really sticks out to me is the shift for Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship. In the first volume, you really see that Attack of the Clones relationship where Obi-Wan basically just scolds Anakin the whole time, and Anakin just keeps disobeying him, and he scolds him, and it's just this back and forth. And then in this one, right away you could tell there's a shift once they become brothers. Obi-Wan says they're brothers now, and you could see that shift. They joke a lot more. Their conversations are a lot like the banter you get in the Clone Wars TV series and Revenge of the Sith. So I think that was really cool how they showed in the first volume the Attack of the Clones relationship and then the shift to the Revenge of the Sith relationship. The scene where Obi-Wan is laying down and the water keeps dripping on him and he's like, how long is this siege going to happen? And then Anakin shows up with all this food full of basically bugs and he's like, you always taught me to feed off the living force. And Obi-Wan's like, that's not what I meant. And then they go in and they destroy the shield generator. And I always love reciting the line when Anakin's like, that's no fun, when Obi-Wan destroys it with the little detonators. And their relationship is really cool. I really like their relationship in this one. It's a lot more, there's more of a camaraderie to it and less Obi-Wan just talking down to Anakin. I also really liked Count Dooku and Grievous training together. Seeing Grievous actually training and learning from Count Dooku was, again, something we missed in the Clone Wars TV series that I think is a blemish, because showing just how he got so deadly, and that was because of how good Count Dooku is, was really special in this movie series. And I like the lessons he gave him and how Palpatine was, watching and observing as it was going on. But there was this understanding that Grievous was not really a Padawan. He was just there for his trophies, the Jedi lightsabers. So then we get to the part that I think takes down the series for me a bit. And it's weird because it's a dual storyline. It's one is on Coruscant and one is on whatever planet they go to. But basically Palpatine sets up this thing so Anakin goes out to this remote planet with Obi-Wan to check on Grievous's whereabouts. Like they should have known once they got to that planet. There's no way Grievous was ever here and they were set up, but they get there so that Anakin is nowhere near Coruscant, so then Grievous can launch his plan to capture the Chancellor on Coruscant. So, Coruscant battle, super cool. It's a bummer that the Clone Wars never got to it. I love how the Clone Wars ended, obviously, but seeing how Palpatine got kidnapped in this one was super cool connection with the Revenge of the Sith one, and the battle itself didn't disappoint. I mean, seeing the shot where all the droid ships are coming down behind Yoda as he's meditating was super cool. And the whole battle between like the bridges and the clones holding the line and then Mace and Yoda holding down the other line and the one Jedi boarding the droid ship. I mean, again, a power fantasy. It was just absolutely over the top. Mace and Yoda literally taking on 1,000 droids by themselves on the left side while all the clones are struggling to take on the droids on their side. But the main thing with that arc was Shaak Ti and the two Jedi. I don't even know if they were masters or not, but they basically sent 3 Jedi to protect Chancellor Palpatine when basically they knew Grievous was coming for him. And Grievous shows up and it's just, he can't be stopped. He destroys all the clones. Shaak Ti and the Jedi are taking them on as much as they can, and the Magna Guard show up, and it's really cool. The whole set piece is really cool. There's a bunch of really funny parts where the guy hits the elevator button and it's not coming, and Grievous is killing all the clones in the other room, and they're like waiting, and the elevator's still not there yet, and he starts pressing the button really fast. I thought the other thing that was really funny was they were fighting on this train station track, and I just don't know why the trains would be running when their whole planet is being torn apart by the droids, but it made for a very cool set piece. And then Shaak Ti, for some reason, stays behind when they get to the elevator thing lift. And she's like, you guys go. And this thing takes off like 1,000 miles an hour. And there was just no reason she shouldn't have got on that, because there was no way that Grievous was going to catch them if they got on that. And she just stayed behind just to get the cred in the Jedi archives. So, I don't know. But her fight with all the Magna Guards was super cool. I like that, seeing her use the staff and the lightsaber at the same time. But of course, as part of Palpatine's plan, Grievous is waiting. He takes out the 2 Jedi. Him and Palpatine do some fake dialogue, and Shaak Ti shows up, and Grievous takes her out. not really. He ties her up. Still waiting for a real canon death for Shakti, because in this one she didn't die. But yeah, then Grievous takes the Chancellor away, and it was really cool because Mace Windu shows up and he, grabs Grievous with the Force, his chest, and his chest stuff like cracks up, and then he starts coughing. You're like, oh, that's how he got the cough. So that was a good little nod to the Revenge of the Sith movie. And now we're gonna get into the second storyline, which is, technically the main one because it's Anakin, but God, was this weird. This was another one that had to be written when someone was on drugs, because I have no idea where they got the idea to have this mother of nature thing that is calling to Anakin to come save their people, and their people are being tested on by being put in vats, and then they turn into these big ugly things that are then turned into, I guess, soldiers, but I have no idea why those big hunks of gross rat-looking thing would be better soldiers than just making more droids, but who knows? And Anakin, and he does all this stuff, and he rescues them, and, they all are missing a hand, and he's missing a hand, so it's like, oh, there's the connection or something, but I don't know. I didn't really care for it as a kid, and I don't care for it now. I thought it was a very weird choice to have Anakin do this self-discovery thing, but I think the only thing that I took away from it that I really appreciated was when Obi-Wan was able to communicate, or he's able to understand all these different languages, especially by this remote planet of people. He understands their language. And that was always one of my favorite things about Obi-Wan's character, was that he was so worldly that he knew all these things and all these cultures, and he was always so respectful of people's cultures. And I like how he said, when you travel the galaxy with Qui-Gon Jinn, you tend to learn some things. And I thought that was really great because Qui-Gon Jinn always preached empathy and caring for every single creature in the galaxy, and that really carries on that theme that he didn't just say that, he meant it. He went to all these planets, he learned all these languages and all these cultures, and Obi-Wan picked up on it, and I really thought that was a good way to connect it to the movies and strengthen Obi-Wan's character, that he learned to empathize with people and look at these creatures in a better light, and it benefits because he got to speak the language, because if he didn't, no one would know what to do, and I definitely would not have gotten that they should go to this factory to save their people from whatever they were saying on that planet. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for that storyline. The other thing that happens is Anakin chokes out a person, and not just chokes them out, absolutely wrecks their neck to the point where their whole suit crumbles in on itself, and you hear their last breath. And I was like, oh my god, that was intense. But yeah, I think that was the end of Volume 2, and that's the end of the 2-volume series. Overall, it did its thing. It did what it was meant to do. Over-the-top Clone Wars actions, putting the wars in Star Wars and putting the wars in Clone Wars, planting the seeds for Anakin being this person that's susceptible to letting his feelings get the best of him, showing his dark side, having Obi-Wan have some more witty banter, showing that he's still worldly, seeing that he rocks the hell out of clone armor. I wish that we saw more Obi-Wan in full clone armor with his cape. That suit was dope. And you got some better insight on Grievous. You got better insight on... Well, you got introduced to Asajj Ventress, not more insight, but... You got that. You got some cool clone action. You got some absolutely ridiculous set pieces. I mean, it was dumb fun. It was dumb fun. I enjoyed rewatching it. And for what it is, I appreciate that it was done. And I appreciate that it's out there again and more people can watch it. I'm very much glad that the Clone Wars TV series was made to fill this gap. But at the same time, this series was created and it was basically framed based on the material that was given between 2 and 3. And I think it stuck to that script very well. And I think it makes us appreciate the Clone Wars TV series and how much it influences what the series is now and how people see Star Wars and how they see the galaxy and how much it did expand the galaxy and what we know about these characters and the clones and everything. And for that, I think that's its biggest legacy, unfortunately, is to make the Clone Wars TV series look even better. and I think that's a fine legacy to leave. I still wish I got more of that Grievous, that real hardcore Grievous, but oh well. But yeah, I had fun rewatching these, and I hope you had fun to me literally just ranting about them. I didn't really have a theme to put together for them, but I thought maybe you guys would appreciate just hearing my thoughts about, the main story arcs in it. So I just took notes and I went through it, and I hope it was entertaining. I'm glad that Disney wasn't afraid to put this out on streaming services because it's not technically canon. So I appreciate them for doing that. And yeah, I think I'll wrap it up there. Don't forget to join the Instagram lives on my account on Thursdays at 8:30. We have a lot of fun. It's all topics that you guys send me, or hot takes or theories or whatever you want. I mean, I just want to talk Star Wars with you guys, with the whole community. I want to build that community aspect. Take away that toxicity, as I said before. Take away that toxicity from Star Wars community. And have just a really fun, chill Thursday nights on my Instagram. Once again, my Instagram is at @star_wars_mark of balance. And yeah, all the info's on there, and join the live, and also let me know what you think of the episode, and if you enjoyed this Clone Wars movie micro series thing, and if it held up for you after all these years. And with that, I will end the episode here. Everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you.